My high school speech teacher said, if you get applause before you start, take them, because you might not get them at the end. Oh, Alex Sarkeesian, you are in my heart and my head. Blessings, beloved of God. What a privilege to be with you and to think about this sacred task. How can they hear unless they send a preacher? So it is not a small thing that we do. But I got a question at lunch that I want to begin with, not in my notes at all. But the question was, how does God work? And it's not just through the preached moment. And some churches privilege preaching. You know, we who are Baptists have central pulpits, and the communion table is somewhere else. We prize preaching. But it was a wonderful thing to have served in an Episcopalian church that housed a counseling center I helped to found, where the table was center. And to understand all of the pieces that come together to constitute worship. So it is good that we gather around preaching, but that question at lunch just made me want to say, I recognize that it is in the gathering, and Jesus was made known in the breaking of the bread. So we have to be careful that we don't make preaching an idol, because there's more to it than preaching. And yet we do recognize, particularly we who are Baptists, that preaching is central. So how to preach a dangerous yes. There'll be a little bit of a refresher from even the sermon this afternoon. So if you weren't there, don't worry. Preaching in the name of Jesus is dangerous. It's just flat out dangerous. It's dangerous because it opens the door to the holy. It's dangerous because it invites the listener to confess each time they miss the mark, our definition of sin, and to turn and go another way, a definition of repent. Preaching is dangerous because it calls the listener to live out of this ethic of love and forgiveness. It's easy to say that, but it's not easy to do it. And it's difficult because it challenges structures. It puts us in opposition to oppressive systems and structures. It requires people and systems to submit to the greater power that is the sovereign God, the one we serve. And it's radical. The word radical means change at the root. So preaching is intended to change at the root the way in which we move through the world. But preaching in the name of Jesus is radical and dangerous in my mind because it seeks to redistribute resources. It seeks to be sure that everybody can live a life of peace, of shalom. But don't ever underestimate that word shalom. The definition of it is a completeness, a soundness in mind and body, welfare, safety, prosperity, peace, tranquility, contentment. Think about preaching as redistributing resources so that everybody can live in a state of enoughness. Enoughness, that abundant life, that sufficiency that we are promised because a cattle on 1,000 hills are his. It's dangerous because the world is not designed this way. It is not designed to distribute those resources for everyone to live in a shalom life. But we preach to bring the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven so that there is a space where everybody has enough. And I don't care whether you're reading Paul or Jesus or the prophets. Everyone speaks to us about peace. You know in 2 Thessalonians that Paul says, now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times in every way. That's this enoughness. Isaiah, when he says, he will keep you in perfect peace whose mind is stayed because we trust in him. Again, that's this enoughness. And when Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, he doesn't mean somebody who's quelching the squabble. He means somebody who's bringing this kind of world into view and into being. And when he says, I give you my peace, not as the world gives it, it's this. We are called to preach and teach and minister so that we bring about a realm of shalom, a realm of enoughness. This morning in the sermon, we talked about preaching with a dangerous yes in our mouths. And I said that to be able to do that, we have to stand. This is the acronym that I made out of the word stand, that if we're going to have this dangerous yes in our mouth, if we are going to preach it, we have to stop and take care of ourselves. We have to be sure we're not doing this alone. We tap our people on the shoulder. We have to acknowledge and believe that you are not doing this by serendipity. You're not doing this by chance. You are doing this because you are called and you are chosen. And the workmanship of God's hand equipped to do good works. And we talked about the fact that this is a fearful time in so many ways. Fearful in the way that the world is changing. Fearful in the way that the church is changing before our eyes. Fearful in the way that people are responding to church. But we must not let fear overtake us. And using the story of Esther, we ended that acronym with to declare that even when God is not visible, God is available. That's what gives us the power to stand with this dangerous yes in our mouths. But it can be hard to stand because the church is in opposition to the world. We are tired because there's been more put on our plate than may even be humanly possible. And this morning in the sermon, we acknowledge that the church is headed into unknown territory. We recognize that these are difficult times. And we also acknowledge that it's especially hard to stand with this dangerous yes in our mouths in unknown territory. The church is moving into unknown territory. I know we have faced difficult times before as the people of God called out and gathered, which is what ecclesia means. I know we have reached and faced difficult times before, but these things have challenged us in a brand new way. That extremism is growing and thriving even in our churches. That there are cultural shifts and social concerns that the church is afraid to respond to, silent about. We don't know how to respond in some ways. And in the digital age, we have information overload. It's hard to shift through what is good and what is true and what is right. We've moved to consumer worship and not participant worship. And there's this smorgasbord of ideas. On any given Sunday, the people to whom you preach have a clicker like this and have gone through, I won't name preachers, but from one end to the other, and may not even know what to believe because on any given morning, they can hear diametrically opposed sermons. This smorgasbord that can result in our people cherry picking the parts of the gospel that they want to follow and absolutely ignoring the ones that don't fit their criteria. And the loss of trust in iconic institutions, including the church, declining attendance in all age groups, and spiritual communities that exist far beyond the church. There are actually communities now that look just like church, except there's no gospel. They gather, they sing, they read texts that they find meaningful, they have coffee hour, no gospel. So people are finding their spiritual nurture in places that I find spiritually bankrupt. So we're facing these problems. And I come to you today and I recognize that it would be easier in some ways to offer this lecture with a list of the tips to improve your preaching. 10 easy tips to be a better preacher. You can find that online and in many other places. But I don't think that's what's really going to affect and shift our preaching to hold this dangerous yes in our mouths. I think that what is going to shift our preaching is a change in our mindset. A change in the way we go about preaching. I come to this because of a particular book that I think I encountered 10 years ago. It's at least 10 years ago. It's called Adaptive Leadership. You can see, and we're going to make these slides available. Anybody who wants them can have them. So it's not the easiest book to read. It's a very technical book. But what Heifetz, Grashow, and Linsky are trying to present to us is this. That for many, many, many eons, the problems we faced were technical problems. Technical problems are easy to identify. My glasses are broken. for instance, and they lend themselves to quick or at least clear decisions. If the arm falls off my glasses, I can see this one little screw, and I probably know how to fix them. And if I don't, I can find an authority, an optician who knows how to fix my glasses. So there's often in technical problems somebody who this is their niche. They know how to fix it. And the change is required in or affected in one place. It's often contained with an organizational boundary or by that expert. And people are generally receptive to technical solutions. Here's a problem, here's how we fix it. And it can often be implemented quickly. But we are not living in the era of technical problems anymore. And again, that book will go into much greater detail. We're not living in technical problem era anymore. We're living in adaptive challenges. Adaptive challenges are difficult to identify. There's not a clear-cut solution. And it requires changes in values and beliefs and roles, perceptions and relationships, and even approaches to the work. And it's the people who are in the midst of that adaptive challenge who are best able to solve it. It's not some far-off expert or consultant. And it often requires changes that crosses boundaries. So it's not one office or one person who can bring the expertise to solve the problem. And it's often resisted because it's messy. And it's like a laboratory. In adaptive challenges, it's not easy to say, this is it. It's likely to be some trial and error. It's likely to be messy. It requires experiments and new discoveries, and sometimes it can take a long time to implement. And when you're facing your church council, they don't want to hear any of this. They want an immediate response. Did you not go to seminary? Do you not have 28 degrees? Can you not figure this out? You're the expert. That's why we hired you. Who's heard that? Or some version, right? But in this adaptive, I actually did a workshop with my church council on adaptive. I didn't do it. I was sitting with them. I had somebody come and do a workshop on adaptive challenges because the things we are facing in the church are not technical problems. They are adaptive. So we have to learn to stand on this adaptive ground. The challenges we face are adaptive. We have to be willing to learn and grow. Nothing about this phase in our culture is fixed. We haven't been here before. I literally asked AI to write a sermon for me, and do you know it was pretty good? It was a little scary. God, you are my witness, you know, I did not preach that sermon, but did I take 3 ideas from it? Yes. Who in the world can sit at their computer and say, give me a sermon on the disciples who never spoke and get over 400 words with ideas? Me. I did it. We've never been in this place before. Nothing is fixed. Everything is changing. And so to adapt is to grow and succeed. And I come back to what I said a moment ago. This is a messy process. That book is worth, this is the picture of it. That book is worth getting. It's a difficult read because they are technicians, but it's worth reading. But the book that I really want to use today is the work of Carol Dweck. This is the book. She's a psychologist at Stanford, and when you get this set of slides, you will see 2 videos that you can go and watch, so you can get a sense of if you want to do this or not. And then I've also listed the link to her profile, so you can learn a little bit more about Carol Dweck. What I want you to know about her work is that she was doing research with children in elementary school. And she found out that if she gave children a problem that was just a little beyond their expertise, a little beyond their development, she found 2 different ways these very young children responded. Some responded with, yes, I'm gonna dive in and learn. And others responded with, no, can I do the puzzle we did yesterday? Because I know how to do that now. And she coined these 2 sets of behaviors A growth mindset, one where you dive in, and a fixed mindset, one where you prefer to stay where you know you will succeed. A fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is formed when we believe the highest goal is to be right. Again, our congregations look at us as the experts, and we can smoke our own press clippings and begin to believe we need to have the answers, and we always or should be able to be right in these difficult and messy and adaptive challenges. A fixed mindset is strengthened by remaining in a place where you will exceed expectations. How many of us have talked about our wheelhouses? And we want to stay in our wheelhouse because in my wheelhouse, I'm going to be successful. And I really like looking good. I really like being successful. The dopamine in my brain fires when I'm successful, and it makes me feel good, and I want to stay right there. That's a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is threatened by situations that extend beyond our area of expertise or control. We really want to avoid challenges and risks. And when I think about this, who wants to play fast and loose with salvation? I don't want to mess that up. If I'm your pastor and your preacher and you are coming to me and I'm supposed to know the Roman road and a whole bunch of other things, I don't want to get out of my area of expertise. I'm playing with yourself. This is when we've smoked our own press clippings, by the way. And a fixed mindset has this notion that even positive critique is negative criticism or judgment. That when we hear it, it wounds us. And it wounds us in part because we are pouring out so much. It wounds us in part, I want to go back to this morning's sermon, because we're exhausted. We don't have space or room even to receive the critique, even from people we trust. And it desires to look the smartest. Again, you've been to seminary. You're supposed to know this stuff. A fixed mindset believes that effort is much less important than innate ability and creativity. It's the kind of thing that makes us believe our gifts are fixed and can't grow. And that's a lie from the pit of hell. But how many of you did gifts inventory? You got it posted somewhere where you can see it, and you've just convinced yourself there's nothing else, that's the limit, that you can't go any further. The gifts inventory is a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it is only a beginning. I love gerunds. Gerunds are those words that end in ing, and they're always ongoing, becoming, growing, learning. They mean you're not finished. I think Christians ought to strive to be gerunds. I think a fixed mindset says, no, we're not, we're done. But we aren't. And so the way you learn to preach, the way you've found success in preaching, you stay right there because it's risky, it's messy. But the world in which we live that is calling forth these adaptive changes is not going to be satisfied. It's not going to be met with us being fixed. So a growth mindset. A growth mindset is formed when we believe learning and growth are the highest goals. I love words. One Christmas, my husband gave me an Oxford Unabridged dictionary. It's about this thick. And a dictionary of etymology and a telescope. It's one of my best Christmases ever. The dictionary of etymology is now online. It wasn't then. But it helps me. Do you know that the root of the word disciple is lifelong learner? That when you call yourself a disciple, what you are saying is, I'm never finished learning. I'm never finished studying. I'm never finished growing. That this growth mindset fits right into who we are as disciples because it's calling us to learn. It's calling us to grow. And a growth mindset, and this is all right out of here, A growth mindset is strengthened by entering spaces where the new and unknown are present. And we see those as opportunities to extend experience and knowledge. I want to focus on the new and the unknown. But my brothers and sisters, that is the realm of the Holy Spirit. The new and the unknown. And so we can adopt growth mindsets because when we enter that space, we are not alone. The Paraclete was promised to empower, to bring to remembrance, to teach us everything we need to know so that new and unknown, while it may be scary to my flesh, my spirit is like, let's go. Because there I will meet the precious nature of the Holy Spirit that opens me to what I do not yet know. A growth mindset is energized by situations that extend beyond our areas of expertise, the same sort of thing. And it embraces challenges and risks as an opportunity to grow. That's back to that Jaron. It sees positive critique as a tool for acquiring new information. That's why you came to Campbell, because you recognized you weren't going to get all A's. And if you thought you were, I want to disabuse you of that notion. If you walk out of here with all A's and you never got a C grade, Campbell failed you because you're not that smart. We're not that full. We're not that ready. You came to be formed. You came to have someone look at your work and help you get better. And we desire to learn from the smartest, not be the smartest. And a growth mindset believes that effort is a path forward and creativity and ability can be developed. Those are those gifts that are not fixed in you, but that are growing. We are both. Now, I want to say if you get the book, you will hear her say that in some places we're one and in some places we're the other. And when I want somebody to fix my catalytic converter, I want a fixed mindset. I want them to identify the project. I want them to be an expert, and I don't want them to be messy with it. I want a fixed mindset with my car is just fine. And my plumber as well. There are times when that makes sense. So I'm not suggesting one is bad and one is good overall, but I am suggesting in this adaptive world, where we're not facing technical challenges, but adaptive changes, a growth mindset helps us in our preaching. And I see it even in the text. A growth mindset, secularly, Dr. Dweck will say, I can do this. But a Christian growth mindset says, I've been equipped for every good for doing, that God has equipped me with everything good for doing God's will. That it fits, that a growth mindset feels to me like what God is calling us to. A secular growth mindset says, I set aside my fear of failure, but my growth mindset as a Christian says, when I'm afraid, God, I put my trust in you. And a secular growth mindset might say, failure is an inevitable part of the process, and that might not feel good to us. But we see in the Psalms that our steps are made firm by the Lord when he delights in our way, though we stumble. That is a declarative statement. It is not a question. We are going to stumble. We shall not fall headlong, for the Lord holds us by the hand. A growth mindset can benefit us. And here's how I think it can benefit the preaching moment. A growth mindset makes us adaptable to change. And I think about Paul in 1 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, I believe, when he talks about, I'm going to be weak for the weak. I'm going to be a slave to everyone. I'm going to be adaptable so that the word that is in me can reach people in a way that makes sense. I told this story at lunch. Forgive me if it's a repeat. I have a grandson, and when he was a little boy, he wrote a rap, and he performed it for me several times, and I could not gather the words. I could not understand him. And I asked this child whom I love for a piece of paper because he was reading from it. He gave me the piece of paper. He performed the rap standing over my shoulder so I could hear him and see the paper, and all of a sudden I could get what he was offering. He had to be adaptable because I couldn't understand what he was doing. And we have to be adaptable because the way that we have been presenting may not reach this current generation. Not because they're not churched. I'm not talking about age and generation. I'm talking about a generation who is receiving such input from so many places that our word has to cut through what they're hearing here. We have to be adaptable. And Paul tells us that in 1 Corinthians 9. And we have to be involved in this continuous learning. Dr. Adrian, where are you? You said you were preaching from Matthew 11 coming Sunday, and you made me think of something. When Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, is it that Jesus is saying to because my yoke is easy and my burden is light, is Jesus saying my yoke is to learn? Is he saying that it's not all the doing? Because you can read that text and think, I'm supposed to go out and do what Jesus says. But the text doesn't say, take my yoke upon you and do as I do. It's take my yoke upon you and learn of me. I think this is this continuous learning, that all the while we are walking with the Savior, our eyes have to be open to learn, to shift, to be adaptive. And a growth mindset can benefit preaching because it is required that we have feedback. I love the fact that Nathan came to David and said, let me ask you a question about a person and sheep, when he was really talking about Bathsheba. And this whole notion of who can you listen to, who can offer you feedback. I have 3 sisters. One is a United Methodist, one is a Congregationalist. We were in Barrington together as senior pastors. And on Thursday, no matter what we had or didn't have, we had a 1-hour conversation where we shared with each other where we were going. And we loved each other enough to hear, that doesn't make sense. Or have you thought about this? Now, 80% of that stuff I probably never used. But for the extroverts in the room, I didn't know what I thought till I said it out loud. And to say it out loud on Thursday to 2 sisters I trusted who gave me feedback changed the way I preached. They were also from that community. They were also white, and I was neither of those 2 things. And so listening to their feedback also blessed me with a deeper understanding of the place I was standing. A growth mindset allows us to be vulnerable and humble. And I know that you know when Paul speaks in 1 Corinthians in the 2nd chapter, he says, I didn't come to you with great words. I came to you with trembling and weakness and humility. This growth mindset that causes us to receive that feedback, to be resilient, to be adaptive, keeps us in that humble and vulnerable space. The resilience in the face of critique we have already described. Collaboration we've already described. And innovation, I just think I am doing a new thing. What's the text, but what's the new way to approach it? I remember when I discovered J. Ellsworth Kalis's From the Backside series. I don't know if any of you know it. He's no longer alive. He was a faculty member at Asbury. Asbury is typically a very conservative seminary. And so thinking about using J. Ellsworth Kalis's work, to me, I wasn't quite sure. But what it did was it forced me to look at the same text I've been looking at. I would tell you, if you use commentaries, if you use books, if you use authors that think exactly as you do, you're missing half the game. You've got to have study. You've got to have sources. You've got to have friends who think differently so that this innovation comes in those dialogues. There is a gentleman whose name is Tom Burns. Tom Burns is a pastor in Barrington. Tom and I agree that Jesus is Lord. He died and got up, and he's coming back again. That might be the end. I don't throw me out, because I know what I'm about to say is controversial, but God just dropped it into my spirit, and while I'm starting to sweat a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and say it. Here's where Tom was most beneficial to me. my little church had the opportunity to ordain a woman who happened to be lesbian. And I was struggling. I called two friends, that UCC pastor, whose name is Gene Hansen, and Tom Burns. And I invited them 3 times to come into my office and pummel me with every question they could come up with, every scripture, every idea. They were my test. And we loved each other. So there was no animosity in that room. And it embraces so many of the things on this list. We were able and if you want to know what we did, I'll tell you later. We were able as a church to make a decision and to move forward. But if I had stuck with what only I knew, if I had only been willing to listen to one side of the dialogue, we would have been in a very different position. So this growth mindset, I don't know it all. This growth mindset, I cannot be afraid of what I disagree with. This growth mindset, I have to put myself in a place to be tested, to be critiqued. I have to put myself in a place of innovation and collaboration. And I have to place fear in its place. And that is under my feet. Because as I seek to preach in a way that is authentic, I can't let the fear rise up. Because the fear keeps me safe. The fear keeps sending me back to where I'm comfortable. And that means I probably am losing more of the gospel than I'm gaining because I'm staying safe. I promise we will have time for questions. I want to show you something. And when you get the slides, you see the link to about an 8-minute video by Stephanie Fay. This was really important to me as I try to understand a growth mindset because I am 68 and a half years old. My way of thinking, my way of being is really kind of set. And if I live with that belief, I'm stuck. This little 8-9-minute video was fabulous because what Ms. Fay, who's a teacher, a middle school teacher, I believe, reminded me or taught me is that we can change the way we think. That the way thoughts are formed in our brain is those purple things at the end are dendrites. And you have all these dendrites in your brain. And what happens is when you have a thought for the first time, it finds another dendrite, but it goes really slowly because it's charting uncharted paths. But the more you have that same thought, it's like you create this yellow part, the myelin sheath. You've heard of white brain matter? The myelin sheath is your white brain matter. It's like between your dendrites and your neurons, you create a path. And the more you think a thought, the faster it runs. I didn't do this. This is how God designed our brains. So you can have these thoughts and you can place them in you in a deeper way. So when you say, I can't change, you have to change the way you say that. I can change. When you say, I'm afraid, instead it's, God, I'm not yet there. When you say, I feel like I'm a failure when I shift, I'm still learning. You replace the negative. You replace the things that keep you in that fixed mindset with a new way of learning by reinforcing in your own beautiful mind, the mind God has given you, the positive things you want to believe. You are leaning into, I can do this. This is how you say it, and it puts it in your brain. It is not a mystery. We can change our thoughts. And that little 9-minute video is really just a beautiful thing to remind us this. You have a thought, the path opens up. The more you think it, the faster the path. The more frequent you think it, the faster the path. And if you've got negative thoughts, they can be replaced. Because just like you set it in place, when you stop repeating it and replace it with other thoughts, it changes. And you can become the one who believes that your growth mindset is strong and you are ready. Now, how do we practice this in the preaching moment? We believe that our brain is malleable. We see prayerful effort as a path to mastery. I can change. You speak to yourself in growth mindset voice. Replace the word failure for the rest of your life. Replace the word failure with not yet. I haven't failed, I'm just not yet there. Because I'm a gerund and I'm continuing to grow, I'm continuing to become. We have to practice a growth mindset. When we feel that fear, we have to ask what's creating it. When we've got a text to preach, when we've got a moment of standing before the people with a word, a dangerous word in our mouths, and we feel that fear, we ask, what is it that God wants me to say? And then we speak to ourselves in growth mindset language. I've already said, find outside help. Persist in the face of setbacks because we are learning. And learn from the criticism. Learn from the smartest person around you. I don't know who it is, but you do. And there are some costs to preaching with a growth mindset because it's messy. You are taking risks. There may be failure. It's messy. And it may be a mismatch to your culture. And I want to stay here for just a moment. A growth mindset, as I said in the beginning, is a little like a laboratory. It requires experimentation. Some of us are in environments that don't allow it. Some of us are in places where taking risks and failing is deadly. And you have to know where you are. If you are in an environment that does not allow for the generative nature and the messy nature of a growth mindset, if you can't take a risk, I'm not telling you to quit your job. I am telling you to learn from that place what you can, but find a place that allows you the expansion of a growth mindset. And a growth mindset will also cause stress because it is messy and because it does require experimentation. And it can shift our understanding of success. It's not that I hit the ball out of the park. It's that by increments, not only am I growing and changing, but the people God has invited me to shepherd are growing and changing. And you might be able to identify additional costs. But I also want to look at the benefits. That in a growth mindset, in the preaching moment, we can acknowledge and embrace our imperfections. At Community Church, where I was for 15 years, so there was a community that I knew. I had 5 people. And nobody in the church knew they were my 5, but they knew. And once a month, I would invite them to tell me what they had learned from those last 4 sermons and what didn't work. These are 5 people I trusted. And I rotated them. It wasn't the whole same 5 people. I didn't do it for the first 5 years. But in my second and third 5 years, I had people that I could ask what were the imperfections, what were the things I learned. And it allowed me to view those challenges as opportunities because they cared for me. They wanted my success. They wanted the success of the sermons. They wanted the success of the church. So they viewed themselves as people helping to build toward taking these challenges and turning them into opportunities. That was one of the different learning tactics that I tried. And I've already said, replace the word failing with not yet or learning. And seeking approval is different than seeking information. To preach with a dangerous yes, you cannot always seek approval because you are going to upset the apple cart in some places. So it's not approval, but it is seeking to be sure that we are building God's people. We value the process leading to the end results. All of this work, all of this recalibration, all of this experimentation, it's not just the end sermon, it's the process that leads us there. And it emphasizes growth over speed. I might not get there in my first 6 months when I'm trying this, but I can see the incremental process. In the book, she talks about rewarding actions and not traits. And what she means by that is instead of saying to somebody, you are really just so smart, instead, it's you work hard. Instead of saying you are able, you speak so well, it's that you've thought about your words as you stand to speak. And I think about that in the preaching moment, that it's not just the characteristics, it's what got me there. It's the actions that are behind them. We've spoken about these others. And again, this is from a Forbes magazine article. So you have the link again to see the entire article. We are moving toward our end, so we have 15 minutes for Q&A. Preaching a dangerous yes requires the things we talked about in the sermon that you've seen already. It requires us to be able to stand. And the reason I think God gave me that sermon is because when I look at a growth mindset as a way of preaching, it's rocky. I want to acknowledge that. It's rocky. And if I am not standing strong in my own being, then that rockiness, that messiness, that experimentation will knock me over. So first, I find my strength in my ability to stand, my willingness to be a disciple, a learner, to view challenges as opportunity, to focus on faithfulness and not on the world's definition of success, that authenticity and vulnerability and humility and resilience. In a moment, I'm going to ask you what you think it takes to preach a dangerous yes, but just 2 more slides. I said this in the sermon this morning, that we are chosen. It's no mistake you are in the role you're in. It's no mistake you're in this room. It's no mistake you are part of the Campbell community as faculty, staff, alumni, or just friends of the university. What's being poured into you here is meant to make you able to stand and to be unafraid of the challenges of learning and shifting and changing, because our world is. And if we don't, then we are doomed to present in ways that do not land. You're chosen, and chosen to bear that fruit that will remain. That has to be a fundamental belief. Because what I've learned in my life of preaching is that the moment I stand and think I'm a fraud is the opening for the enemy to take me down. Hear me, I'm not talking about doubt. I doubt, but that means I bring my doubt to the foot of the cross. It's when I think I'm an imposter, that I'm my weakest. And I move back to my fixed mindset because I'm confident there and I'm sure there. And that means I'm not adapting and I'm not changing, and the world is, and I'm stuck. So this text from John 15 is crucial. You are chosen. You are not an imposter. You are not a fraud. All of the ways in which the world and the church is changing around us, that text about God equipping us for every good work is the truth for you and me who are chosen, who've been called to this position. And I want to end with this, that why do we preach a dangerous yes? Why do we do all this work of developing this growth mindset, of not staying stuck, of taking all of those things that you learn in your preaching class and you learn in all the workshops you do, but applying them through a growth mindset? Why do we do this? Because preaching is at all times cruciform. It seeks to strengthen our relationship with Christ and to extend the kingdom in the offer of salvation, in the presence of social justice, in the power to change the world. All power, I read, is placed in the hands of the one who then gives it to us. So the question I have as I close my part and we prepare to have some time just to talk, is preaching a dangerous yes worth it to you? Don't answer. That's a question that can only be answered in the quiet of your prayer closet, because it's hard and it's dangerous. Is preaching a dangerous yes worth working to develop a growth mindset? Don't answer, because it's hard work and it takes us out of our comfort zone and it makes us vulnerable when we want to look like the experts. but it's the way in which I believe I've experienced that I can grow my preaching, I can shift it, I can be heard in communities that are remarkably different because I'm willing to give away the easy and the fixed and to trust that God is not through with me yet, to trust that even at almost 70, there is room for me to develop and become even more of who God calls me to be. The world is in need of your mouth filled with a dangerous yes. The world is in need of your ability to stand and to grow into that as God would have you. My prayer is that you answer those two questions. Is preaching a dangerous yes worth it? Is developing a growth mindset worth it? I pray you answer them yes. And the God of peace, the God of shalom, cover and fill and send you exactly where you need to be. God bless.